Hey everyone, Clint here from Oak and Iron Outdoors. You know, 4 of these bucks back here came via the grunt call. And what I want to do today is I want to go over 3 easy sequences that anybody can master in regards to utilizing this grunt call. And then I want to go over the snort wheeze. And then what I want to do is I want to talk about at the end the scenarios when these should be utilized and when they should not be utilized. And you know, I hate to say it, but I think most people overutilize the grunt call. So let's go over all of that right now. Now the call that I'll be utilizing today is my favorite call is the Quaker Boy Brawler. This guy here, it's actually got more of a rubber type feel to the tube and not that plastic. And then I like it so much that I have a backup actually. And I am not sponsored or know anybody from Brawler. It's just my favorite grunt call, and I've tried a lot over the years, including the Extinguisher, the True Talker. I might get my hands on one of those custom-made ones. I've been kind of looking at a few of those. But for right now, this call has worked great for me. So today we're going to be utilizing the Brawler. One thing I just want to let you guys know is that I have the microphone on me right here. So you're actually going to see me tip the bottom of the call back towards the microphone. So that way you guys can pick up the sound. But normally I will have the call out in front of me. So the first sequence, which is the easiest sequence, and this is what I utilized for 3 of the 4 bucks that I got on the wall back here, is just simply 3 short grunts. And it sounds something like this. And that little sequence right there, it gets the buck's curiosity to come on in to check things out. Now, it's just basically what I call a vanilla grunt, if you want to call it that. But I like that particular grunting style because, as you can tell in the sound, it is not very aggressive. It's just more or less to get those bucks are, you know, maybe coming by and to just check things out and see who's in the vicinity. It's an easy style, and what I like about it too is it doesn't go over the top. Now I utilize that call most of the time, the 3 grunts, and you know the purpose of that is just basically catch their attention. Now one of the things I like to do is if I see a small buck, a fork or a 6, or let's say a basket 8, I do like to grunt them in and get them to come into me and hopefully not snort and blow the place out. But in most cases they do not, especially during the rut time frame. And the purpose of that is to have them come in and leave their scent. I want them to come in close and to leave their scent on the ground, so that way later, if a big boy comes in and I grunt at him, if I need to grunt at him, he comes in and he starts to pick up that smaller buck's scent, and then he'd be like, okay, this is making a little bit more sense to me. There should be whatever I just smelled. And they can tell by the smell on how big that buck is, and like, yep, there's a smaller buck here. I feel a little bit safer coming into this zone and into that area. So that's where I usually use the 3 grunts. And then once again, it's a little bit more of a curiosity grunt call to get them to come on in. Now the next sequence that I like, and that's essentially just ramping it up and then back down and just making longer grunts and then putting a short one in between. So it sounds something like this. So all I'm doing there is I'm just ramping it up and I'm bringing it back down. Do that a couple of times, and I might throw a couple of little grunts in there. Now that is a much more aggressive grunt call, you know, and that's where you're in the case of maybe you're using a deer decoy and you're trying to challenge that buck to essentially come in and come into that decoy and then hopefully get him in range of your bow. Now the third sequence that I like to utilize is essentially very similar to the first one. But the first one, I like to have a couple of seconds, sometimes even 5-second pause in between those short grunts and just catch their attention. Where this sequence, it's going to be a lot of rapid, short grunts. And if you've ever watched bucks trail does, and when they're hot on their trail and things are happening, it's going to sound this really short, quick grunt, and it goes something like this. And all it is these little hyper grunts lined up, and you can perform those multiple times, 8, 9, 10, 11 times. And I'm performing that grunt right in that middle of the rut and just basically trying to once again get another buck, a bigger buck, to check out what's going on in the area, or to challenge this particular buck that he hears via the grunt call. Now, I want to talk about some sequences utilizing the grunt call and where some guys can get themselves in trouble. For me, I'm going to be honest with you, I don't do any random calling for the most part. When I utilize the grunt call, its primary purpose is to turn a buck around when I know he's literally going to be leaving what I call my out of range zone, that he's not going to be in range of my bow. Because I've seen it way too many times that if you call, especially random calls, your big bucks, especially bucks on pressured properties, they like to come downwind of you, and they like to stay out in that 70, 80, 90 yard range where they're just too far to shoot. So what they like to do, they like to come all the way around the backside, and they want to pick up your wind. And they're just trying to see essentially whether it is a human or what kind of buck it is, and they can tell that from getting downwind. So if you do random calling, I found it to be best that you have something in your downwind side that is an open area. Water really works well, especially if it's a lake. They're not going to go into the lake to try to see who is behind them because it's going to slow them down too much. They just don't go into a lake for that purpose. An open field can work, although I've seen big bucks will circle you to come downwind and pick up your wind and see who you are, even in an open field. But in a lot of cases, especially if it's a pressured property or pressured properties, they do like to stay in the wooded area. So you do have to be careful, when utilizing those grunt calls. The other thing that I see a mistake guys make is that when that buck is coming in towards you, they think that maybe they can get it to come in faster or much closer to them, and they'll hit that grunt call. And in a lot of cases, that's not going to work. You can spook them. If they're coming, let them come. And I'm not saying that the grunt call is going to spook every deer in the deer woods, because it doesn't, but in some cases it does. And it depends upon the experience that the buck had with maybe a hunter and the grunt call. The other mistake I see people make is it depends upon the underbrush or understory of the area that they're hunting. When these bucks come in, you'll notice that they have their head on a swivel and they're looking. And let's just say that you are on an edge of hardwoods, open hardwoods and swamp area, and he decides to come out on the open hardwoods. And it is amazing how they can pinpoint this grunt call literally to your tree that you're sitting in. And I've had a buck actually from about 600 to 700 yards away, and he came through a cornfield, a standing cornfield. And when he came out the bottom side of the cornfield, I wasn't even expecting it, which was at the time about 15 yards away. He looked directly at my tree. And it was amazing that he could walk that far through that cornfield and be able to pick me up exactly where that grunt call came from. With their ability to know where that call is coming from, they're going to look in the area. And if you have open hardwoods or you have an open area under you and they don't see that deer, or they don't see that particular buck that's making that noise, a lot of cases they get wary of it, they get nervous about it, and then they'll get the hell out of Dodge. So that's one thing that you do have to be a little careful of when utilizing the grunt call. Now, for me, utilizing the grunt call, it's just that last minute turnaround. They just got out too far, or I see them walking along, let's say another edge, and I'm like, okay, there's no way that he's going to come into me. I'm just going to try to see if I can't turn around to come on in. Now, this is the scenario where I really see guys mess up with the grunt call. And what happens is during this rut time frame that these bigger bucks, what they like to do is obviously dog those does, chase those does through those thickets. And guys will get on that grunt call. And if a big buck is with a doe and he hears that grunt call, he's going to assume that it's another buck. And he's going to push that doe away from you as fast as he can push her. He'll get literally right behind her, and both of them will take off the opposite direction. So what I like to do, if this is the scenario, you just wait it out all day. You sit tight, don't hit that grunt call. And a lot of times later in the afternoon, he's going to come back again, and he's going to see if there's any other does that are, still in estrus. Sometimes I think it's just that, he knew how much fun it was there in the morning, so he wants to come on back for the afternoon. And at this time, if he's by himself, then you hit the grunt call. And in most cases, then he'll come into you. But if he's got a doe with him, don't hit that grunt call. He's going to push her away ASAP. Now let's talk about the snort wheeze and how I essentially do my snort wheeze. And my snort wheeze is very simple. I utilize essentially 3 distinct sounds, and the first 2 sounds are a f, f, and then, and I'll cup my hands and it'll sound like this. And essentially those first two sounds I like to relate to the movie character Boba Fett, and the last name Fett, and then you take away the two T's, so it's fa, and it's fa. So you're going fa, fa, and then you just continue the F's all the way across. Once again. And that's essentially how I do the snort wheeze. And then I take my hands, cup my hands, and then I try to put that snort wheeze wherever I would like to put it. Now, the issue with the snort wheeze is that it is usually done by a very dominant buck. So you have to be kind of careful when you utilize the snort wheeze. In most cases, if you have your average to mid-sized bucks for that area that you're hunting, we'll call it, it can do more harm than good. So what I like to utilize is that I've exhausted all three sequences of the grunt call, and then I just break out essentially the snort wheeze. And this is basically to let him know that, hey, I'm another big buck. I am challenging you right now. Come and get it. You know, I see some of these calls, they got that little piece on top, and yeah, you can utilize it. I'm sure it helps, but just cupping your hands and creating the and you're trying to get those two Boba Fett sounds, the fat without the T sound, really close together, and then you're just extending those F's all the way across. So that is essentially how I perform the snort wheeze. And until next time, Clint from Oak and Iron Outdoors.